Wanted to welcome you guys to the last session of the day. Thank you again for taking time out of your Friday afternoon to spend that with us. As Tom said earlier, we feel very honored. So we are going to share today just some practical things that we have learned, but you do need some supplies to be able to talk and engage with us today. So you're going to need a piece of paper and something to write with. So if you want to take just a second to grab that, because we're going to ask you to do some reflecting as we go through our session today. You're also going to be asked to please share. We know that sessions like this on a Friday afternoon especially sometimes are difficult, and so hearing from you guys is really going to be helpful for us. So if you would please share. Or
Miriam, helpful for them, Miriam. Helpful for them, not us.
Yes.
For them.
Helpful. Well, also for us to know we're not the only ones that have gone through this. So sharing and just talking with one another. And then we hope that you walk away with this feeling curious, with also some action items to take forward to wherever you are working in whatever position that may be. So I'm going to turn this over to Tom Pengelly.
All right, guys, again, hey, thank you guys so much again for being here. We appreciate it. So our talk this afternoon, we're going to divide it into three different phases. We're going to look at, first of all, the origin story. We're going to look at collaboration and collegiality. And lastly, we're going to look at, our present positions, not just our present positions, but as you reflect also, where are you at in the Excel Center world? Now, honestly, when I hear the word origin story, we came up with that, I couldn't help but connect that idea with heroes. And I don't know how to tell you this, but we are not heroes. We're impressive, but we're not heroes, right? And we recognize that. But here's what I realized as we were putting this together, that the GEI mission is heroic. And we quickly realized early on after we started that this heroic mission, we did not have the skills or the ability alone by ourselves in order to empower and equip students to meet this mission, right? We needed each other. We needed to work together. We needed to come together, and we needed to make this thing happen. So, as Miriam has already said, our sincere hope today is that you are going to engage with us in this presentation and use it as a time of reflection, right? To unpack your own origin story, right? To look at the heroes that you are working with, whether you consider them members of a fellowship, or whether you consider them Avengers, or whether you consider them, wait for it, right? Super friends, all right? And then assess where you are now and where you are going. You caught the super friends, I hope, right? That was the key thing. So who wants to start off? Who wants to share their first origin story?
I will. So I started as a high school math teacher in a small little country town in the middle of cornfields called Rushville, Indiana. And I started teaching high school math, and then was ready to move to a different place, ready to get out of there. And the thing that brought me to Goodwill was it was the quickest application. So I put in my application, and Val Novichevsky called me the next day. So that's what brought me to Goodwill. And I think that's one of the things we want to share, is that we each have very unique ways that we have found our place here and found our way here. And mine, I had no idea what the Excel Center was about when I applied. It was just a teaching job. And so I said, yes, please, I'll take it.
Mine is similar. I taught high school science, and my wife and I live in Muncie, and I was driving to Greenwood. So that's about an 80-mile drive one way. And so for me, similarly, the application process was smooth. And I remember vividly the day that I got a call from Elise Davis saying, hey, guess what? We'd love for you to come to Anderson. I was packing my box while they finished their final. So I was so excited to join this opportunity at the Excel Center, but it got me closer to home. I really didn't know what I was signing up for, but I knew it was a unique challenge. So I'm glad I took it.
Excellent. So my story again, right? Everybody has a very unique origin story. So mine is a little bit different. When Miriam and Brandon are starting and joining the Excel Center at the very beginning of their profound professional careers, right? I came into the Excel Center in the middle of my professional career. My wife and I have been living in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm not from there. I'm a New Yorker. I just want to clarify that right up front. I'm from the North, but we have been living in Columbia, South Carolina for about 8 years. We're, great school. I was working in a private school, a senior teacher. Things were going well for us. I've just been offered a leadership opportunity at the school, quite honestly. And my wife discovered this great opportunity she had to get back to working with university students and to get her master's degree at a college here in Indiana. I say here, I'm not there, but they're in Indiana. And, I loved my career, but I love my wife more, quite honestly. And it was a pivotal moment for her, and she has supported me to get my master's. So this is my opportunity to give back. Now, I had always sought positions because of a mission, but quite honestly, I had applied at every place I could in Indiana, and only Joe White, all right, the director of Anderson, Indiana Excel Center at the time, gave me a call. And so, yes, I valued the mission. I was excited about the mission, but I was more excited, quite honestly, about the paycheck, and thankful for that. All right. So a couple of questions we have for you guys. So those are our origin stories, right? And that's an important thing for us all to be able to identify our own origin stories. So our first question we want you to think about today and this afternoon is this: what has led you to the mission? And we're going to give you guys about a minute to reflect. And the next question is, what is your role in achieving the mission as you understand that? Okay, so it's 4:37 right now. All right, in some odd seconds. So we're going to give you to 4:38. Take a minute, and we'll call on you momentarily. Nikki Rutherford, just so you know, I will be calling on you in a few seconds.
I'm ready.
Thank you. Well done, Rutherford. All right. So finish up. Take another 15 seconds. Finish up your last thought. Okay. Nikki Rutherford is going to model this for us. Nikki, you can respond to either one of the questions, not both if you don't have to, but if you don't want to. But go ahead, Nikki. What'd you come up with?
All right. So I was led to the mission by, I think, God. I'm not going to lie to you. I was in a middle school and I was very miserable and I was praying for an out. And I always wanted to do adult education. And the Excel Center in Kokomo was opening in 2013. And I literally worked 2 doors down. So it was like so perfect. The timing was perfect and everything. But my role, I guess, is always remembering that I'm there for a purpose and that I can help change lives, which is awesome to think that that's true. And to encourage and to be, to be a good support to our students.
Excellent. That's perfect. Thanks a lot, Nikki. I appreciate it. It's good hearing from you.
Yeah, we miss you.
All right. Somebody else want to share out?
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead.
It's Katie.
Yes, I recognize the voice, Katie.
Okay, good, Tom. Just checking. What led me to the mission was being able to help people as they go beyond high school. I had been a traditional teacher, high school teacher, prior to coming to the Excel Center, and I love the idea in the CCR space of being able to help connect people to those steps after high school. And then I also really loved the part of the mission about being able to give people more opportunities. I know that technically isn't in the mission statement, but just that whole idea of we are a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chance for people to be able to get their key to the next steps after high school. And then my role in achieving the mission. So I am very lucky that I get to work with schools across the country in the national office. And so I think my role is growing and connecting people across the country and helping to open more schools and expand this great thing that we're doing.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot for sharing, Katie. Okay, anybody else? We have time for one more person to share out.
Go ahead, Joe. I see you raising your hand.
Okay, very quickly.
All right, Joe McDonald. Joe
Yes.
McDonald, where are you from and what do you do, sir?
I've worked with Mr. Pengelly, Professor Pengelly,
Oh.
Goodwill Excel Center in Washington, D.C. on 1776 G Street Northwest. But what led me to the mission is I was an adult student myself. I dropped out of not high school, but college in my sophomore year to go find myself. I didn't until I got back to the Goodwill Excel Center. But during that time, I worked for the airlines, traveled all over the world looking for something that was fulfilling, or not, I don't even like to use that word, but something that I enjoyed doing. I loved traveling and that was a blast, but I knew there was something that was missing. I decided 30 years to the date that I dropped out of school to return and get my bachelor's degree. By luck of the draw, I ended up working at Catholic University in admissions and got my master's degree. One day somebody came down the hall and said, hey, we need a teacher to teach this class. And somebody said that you can do it. And I said, okay, cool. That's how I became a teacher. That was now 7 years ago. I ended up seeing an ad in LinkedIn for the Goodwill Excel Center about teaching adult students. And I thought, wow, I really want to help people achieve the success that I have achieved without knowing it. I didn't know what my potential was. I didn't know how to achieve success. I didn't know any of my hidden talents. And the irony of it is that the GEC is right across the street from the very first job I ever had as a busboy in a restaurant. So I went, around the world to come back home. So my role in achieving the mission is to help our students achieve the great success that I have got.
Right. Excellent. Thanks for sharing. And everybody else, thank you guys so much for sharing. We appreciate that. Right. And again, hang on to that idea of not only your origin story, but what is your role in the mission? That's going to play a role into our next set of activities. So let's go on to our next slide. Who has this next category? Phase 2.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we think about as we think about our teams, right? Because this session is talking about utilizing the teams and professionals and people that we work with every day. And so as you think about your origin story and you think about how different Tom, Brandon, and I are, and what our origin story was, we all still were hired to work in Anderson together for one mission. And so when we think about, we all came from different backgrounds, but we were stuck physically in a building together. And so we didn't know each other before we started working. And so we wanted to share just a little bit about how, even though we all came from different origins and different backgrounds and different motives that brought us to this place, as you guys have with those that are working with you, the mission is still the same, right? And we opened Anderson, the three of us did, in 2012. And so almost 10 years later, the three of us are still here in Goodwill Education because we believe in the mission. And so when we think back to the beginning of working together, we had this inevitability that you have to work very closely with one another. And we all come from pretty small staffs. I mean, no Excel Center has a staff of 100 people. That would be great, but that's just not the case, right? And so Tom and I were promoted to lead teachers together back when there were Excel Centers that had 2 lead teachers. So Tom and I inevitably were given the opportunity.
Forced. Wow. Wow. After all these years, the truth.
We were given the opportunity to work together, and we had been friends. We knew each other, but when we began as lead teachers together, it was really evident what our strengths were. Tom is very much an ideas man with lots of vision. And my personality is, let me take that vision and let's put it into action. And so Tom and I would joke all the time that he was the train engine with the idea plowing forward, and I was the caboose that made things happen, right? And so Tom and I worked really, really, really well together. But we didn't have a choice. And so I think in the beginning, we began to learn each other's strengths. But then there were a few opportunities that I had in my role that were unexpected, right? And There are times when we think we have it all together and we're going to knock that curveball out of the park. And then there are times that we totally are off base and we miss things. And I had a situation where I was totally off base, and I was able to talk with Tom about what was happening. We had to bring him into the situation. In my relationship with Tom, my work relationship with Tom, created a space for us to be able to have genuine conversations where Tom could say, Miriam, you have to look at this differently. This is not okay. Like, we need to reframe the way that that conversation just happened. Tom and I were able to really begin having some crucial conversations about our unique leadership styles and how they were affecting the team. And I think about those times with Tom, and even 8 years later, Tom said something to me about how relationships require grace, and crucial conversations cannot happen without relationship. And so I think 8 years ago, Tom said that to me, and that's something that has stuck through, and it totally molded the way that I began to work through different leadership styles with different teammates. And I think one of the opportunities that Tom and I had was he wanted me to succeed, and I could feel that I was very young in my teaching career. Tom says he was seasoned. And so Tom was able to see my blind spots, but also point them out to me. And for us to be able to have the community with one another, for Tom to tell me what those blind spots are, right? And I'm not a person that always loves feedback, but Tom and I had the opportunity to share that with one another. And as iron sharpens iron, as the saying that goes, right? And Tom and I really had a lot of opportunity to be able to do that. But I think for me, as a new leader, and as any of our new leaders have, I'm sure, whether you're leading in the classroom, whether you're leading a team, whether you're leading at the corporate level, right? We all, as new leaders, experience a growth curve, and some of us are going to crash and burn during that growth curve, but then we also have the opportunity to grow through constructive feedback. And I think that was one of the things that really, really stuck out to me as we began this journey together in leadership, was that I felt like those around me wanted me to succeed. And I was able to open myself up and be vulnerable. I think leadership takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to listen to others, accept the feedback, and then move forward. So one of the things that we all know this, right? But just a mindfulness of how trust and trusting those around you to point out your lack of awareness and your blind spots, because we all want to grow together. And so I think as time and experience progressed, I was able to shift from, hey, how are you guys doing, to I know you well enough to know how you're processing, how you're thinking through things. I know how you receive feedback. And it was because we were intentional about sharing life and work with one another. We didn't get together outside of work and go eat dinner every weekend, but in the moment, in the work field, when we were given the opportunity to be next door to one another in our offices, these types of situations happened. So in this collegiality and collaboration that organically happens, sometimes it's not as organic. And sometimes we have to create opportunity for that. And Tom's going to talk a little bit about that.
Right. So Miriam, by the way, was much too gracious and kind and all that. I learned a ton from her as well. Like the engine doesn't get there by alone, that's for sure. All right. So a couple of things, right? I've been given the opportunity to talk about turning points. And again, we all are going to have turning points. And the unique thing about a turning point is the reality is you don't see the turning point coming, right? You recognize a turning point after you've gone through something. Sometimes that's positive, sometimes that's negative, but you got to go through something. And a lot of times, as comfort, right? It's easy to continue in the way you have been doing things, right? It's difficult and challenging, and sometimes scary, right? To go out and say, I'm going to change the way I've done something, or I'm going to take on this new opportunity, right? The idea of courage over comfort. And so Brandon and Miriam have been gracious enough to allow me to speak about their turning points as well. And again, the turning points for us, for each of us, are going to happen in this situation. We're going to look specifically at Anderson when we were working together, right? And it happens because, again, we had a foundation with each other. And so that when our turning point moment took place, right, we weren't doing it alone. We were doing it, all right, with people we trusted, that we built a relationship with, and that could help us be successful in that turning point. So for our friend here, Mr. Brandon Marks, Mr. Marks and I have been working again as with Miriam, right? We've been there for a year and a half, and he had been a STEM instructor. Mr. Marks and I had really built castles and visions in the sky of what the Excel Center could be, should be. We had a national office, Katie, built, right? Waiting for you. So we were there. Now, Marks was in the classroom though, and he is now given the opportunity to step into what Joe McDonald is, a CCR at DC, was given the opportunity to step into that role. And so all that plan that we had done together, now he has a chance to put that into practice. And that was a powerful moment. He now becomes the face of the Excel Center for us in Anderson, and connecting us with corporations and companies and organizations, creating pathways that hadn't existed before for students, and then equipping students to step into those pathways and be successful. Beyond that, he's going to be able now to have an expanded community outside of Anderson and begin to work with other CCR individuals throughout the Excel Center network in Indiana, which is a great opportunity for him to see other parts of the Excel Center world, right? And then realize, hey, I've got something to offer to this world. And it was just a pivotal moment in his career and trajectory. All right. Miriam's already kind of alluded to hers, right? Miriam was a lead, right? And she'll be modest here. She didn't say anything, but she was a phenomenal lead, right? I have never known a person who has the ability to analyze a teacher, to analyze a classroom, to develop curriculum and organize it and see how do you lay this thing out in a practical way that's going to impact the students, right? And how does an instructor's transitions impact what's going on in that classroom, and really put together a complete lesson. And her feedback is still something, every once in a while I got some of that. I'll look that back up, strengths and weaknesses. Okay, we'll go back to the rubric. And so that I look at and find value in, right? But what Miriam went through, she had a challenging instructor, as we all have, a challenging individual that was under her leadership. And it came to a very crucial moment. And in that moment, Miriam made a choice, right? She could continue to lead in success, right? The way she had been leading, but I think that would have limited her success in the future, or she could choose to shift and learn to lead through relationships. And I think it was that choice, right? That courageous choice. I'm going to shift my philosophy that has allowed her to continue to grow and be incredibly successful as the director of Anderson currently. So, right, you can learn through that as well. And the last thing is my own turning point at the Anderson Excel Center. Again, I was already in a leadership position. My turning point is going to come when I realize that the mission and the role of the mission can be expanded to meet the needs of the community. And so it was an April evening, and I was talking with a guy named Juan. And even though I'd been a lead, I had rarely done anything with after hours. And in talking with Juan was trying to learn English. He was working all day trying to learn English really quick, and was using Read 180. If some of you have been around for a while and know Read 180, Noah's Bueno. That's not a good way to learn English, my friends. All right, you're not going to learn English through Read 180. So in that moment, right, I saw the vision, and Miriam and Brandon were right there by my side, not always willingly, but they were there, and I needed them because we went from 5 E&L students to close to 90 by Christmas. Absolutely phenomenal, right? The mission is there to serve the community. All right, so turning points through collaboration are important, but it's not all bed of roses, is it, Mr. Marks?
No, it's not. With all good things must come some unique opportunities. So where Tom comes to you with that idea of 5 students, we know what is, right? We knew our community needed support and that perception. And what you have when you have a teammate like this, you have the opportunity to balance each other out. So where Tom told you we had this amazing growth, we made sure to tell him the perception of that growth was out of control. We had to help him guide and build Now, your individual realizations as an employee, as an individual, as a person, have to be supported not only in your personal life, but your professional life. And as Tom said, we were right there with him. We wanted to make sure that we understood what the impact could be for our school. Now, that our statement's pretty important, right? It's our school, and making sure that it's our community. And we were right there to show him his reality, right? Here's 90 students we have to serve. And we wanted to make sure that we then broke that down and actually built a better plan to serve to the best of our abilities. Hardships like that happen. Hardships happen when you have a leadership vacuum, right? When somebody makes that choice to leave, which we had happen early on at Excel Center Anderson, you have to step in. Sometimes the power vacuum breeds contempt and chaos, and sometimes it just breeds leadership. And a lot of us stepped in this role and said, you know, we have to close this school down and make it successful for the end of the year. What I mean by that is not close it, but what I mean by make sure we end the year strong with that A school, with graduates across the stage, with staff feeling comfortable as we prepared to find a new leader for us. And we also needed to make sure that we as individuals were growing, not only that, in our understanding of the mission. You know, Tom alluded to the fact that now we're all sitting in leadership that is similar in a lot of your buildings. How do we then look at that opportunity as not as a negative? You know, it is a hardship not to be having that front runner as a leader, but how do we then say, okay, you have the whole building. How would you run it now? How would you impact one another in a way that grows to the outcome we all signed up for? And those hardships are unique. And they're the moments where you can really make and break yourself. And having that support around you is beneficial. And you can end up with a outcome that is even better than you've seen before. So it's my goal with you all to kind of share just some quick reflective questions. So as you look around, if you think about it, yeah, it's almost 5 o'clock on a Friday, but you know, how are you sharpening those around you? You know, we all made this unique choice to hit apply. You know, how are you sharpening those around you while you're there? Those students you impact, those staff members you interact with every day. How are you helping? What has been?
Hey, you're muted, Brandon. You're muted.
Yeah. Miriam got tired of hearing me talk, everybody. What's been your turning point? Has it been, you know, a great opportunity for you to look back and look back down the road and say, you know what, that was awesome. I will remember that point, that pivot point for the rest of my career. Or was it a hardship that you're like, you know what, this is where I grew the most? Mm-hmm. And then who have you allowed to challenge you, to see your blind spots and share that with you? Who is in your camp and saying you're doing this right and you're doing this wrong? I think we all know that affirmation and praise culture is a real thing in this day and age. Sometimes we can get lost in.
Okay, so it's 4:59. You guys will have about 5 o'clock, a little later. Miss Kelly, we're coming your way at one point. Miss Kim Kelly, we're coming your way.
We'd also like
I think we're ready to get some thoughts, aren't we? So who's our first voluntold? I'm going to take an opportunity and I'm going to be like, this is the first time I'm going to be able to tell a VP, hey, we'd love to hear from you. So Zaida, we'd love to hear from you.
Let JD, is that how you say your name? You go first. I'll go after.
My name's JD. I'm the director in the St. Louis Excel Center. And the first question is probably maybe the hardest one for me to answer. I guess I feel like I try to give my staff both positive and critical, what's the word I'm looking for? Feedback, just like we want them to do for the students. So I'm hoping that I'm encouraging them and giving them recognition when they're doing great things. And I encouraged a lot of them to present today, and a lot of people did. So just sort of recognizing their strengths and things that they have to share when they maybe would rather just sit back and not do that. I don't know if that's a great answer for the first one, but I hope that's what I'm doing to help them. The turning point and hardship for me. So I retired from public education in 2014 and realized in a couple of years that I wasn't really ready to be done. And so I found out about this opportunity and actually applied to be a teacher and got hired to be the director, which I wasn't really sure I accepted, obviously. I had an administrative position in my former school, but I was never a principal. So felt a little intimidated, but I think the hardest part for me was that in my previous position, I knew all of the people that I was supervising prior to, or I hired them. And I came into this position and pretty much everyone was hired before me. And I didn't have any relationships. And I think my leadership style is based on my relationships. So that is really a struggle for me. It took me a while to really get to know everyone and feel confident in the position because it wasn't something I had real experience in. So I think just the whole thing, starting a new school from the ground up, starting in a position I had never been in. But I would tell you that I feel this year, I felt like for the, probably if you were a teacher, your third year was the year you were like, okay, I think I got this now. That's sort of how I felt this year. And I think it's because I now feel like I have those relationships and I kind of know what I'm supposed to be doing, even if I don't always get it right. And I've definitely feel like I'm surrounded by a great staff. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Saida Monel, and I'm the VP of Human Resources for Goodwill. And your stories really make my heart sing. I remember when most of you were hired, and the fact that you're still here makes me so proud and so happy. So sorry, I had to say that. How I'm sharpening those around me. I have never been, nor will I ever be, a micromanager. And the people that report to me have a lot of freedom because I trust them 100%. And they have never let me down. I'm very proud of my team. They are very strong professionals. And I believe that as a leader, your number one responsibility is making sure that the people that you work with are ready to be promoted when the time is right. So I make sure of that. A turning point in my professional career, I have been doing this, it's going to be 33 years come August. So my turning point was early on. I guess I was at a different organization back home in Puerto Rico. I was in manufacturing. And there was an opportunity and I applied for, but was not given the opportunity. And that it made me sad, of course. I was not happy about it, but it made me figure out what was it that my supervisors were not seeing that they didn't think I was ready. So after that, I got myself into a couple of certifications and programs so that the next time that the opportunity arises, I was prepared. And it happened and everything went well. And who you allow to challenge you? Well, I don't know that that I allow them, but my children challenge me daily. And sometimes not in the best of ways, but then again, they are millennials, so I have to deal with that. I also allow my colleagues as well as my direct reports to challenge me, because there's a couple of things that I know I'm not very good at. So what my strategy has been is to surround myself with people that are really strong in the areas that I'm not very good at. And then I count on them to help me through my blind spots. And I think creating I love it that you guys mentioned crucial conversations. I'm going to tell Val, she's going to be so happy.
Yes, please do.
I think that creating an environment of trust and respect in which you can share that information is vital. And I think that we have that at Goodwill, and I'm really proud of that. So
Thank you guys for sharing. We have just about 10 minutes left. So we're going to talk about kind of like our final phase. Phase one, we think about our origins. Phase two, we think about collaboration and collegiality and how are we growing with those that are around us. And so looking forward, we think about, I don't know that Brandon, Tom, and I would have pictured ourselves 9 years later in these positions in leadership, we each have led a school at some point. We are open to a lot of constructive feedback, not just from each other, but from our teams that we serve. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the three of us talked about as we were preparing for this is thinking about the hardships we've gone through, the turning points we've had, the relationships we've created with one another that started in one building. Would we have been at the place we are now? Would our journey have been the same towards leadership without each other? And so I want you to think, as you are thinking about those you're serving, those that you report to, both ways, right, on the ladder, without those people and without relationships, because we all have been in jobs where we just go in, clock in, and leave, right? But there's a reason why we are, 9 years later still here. The reason why Zaida has spent most of her life at Goodwill, right? Like, why is that? It's because the people that we surround ourselves with push us to be better. And so one of the things that we want you to reflect on as our final question of reflection is, this is going to be a rhetorical question, but I want you to take the time to think through this. Who is going to be your professional person going forward? What we mean by that is Tom and Brandon became my professional people, right? The people I went to for everything, the people who checked me, the people who said, Miriam, you need to cut that out, like change your tone, this is not working, that I allowed them to have that space in my work life. And so who is going to be that person for you? And then how are you going to be intentional about growing with that person? Because we have some mixed company, we're not going to share out our answers, but we want to give you about a minute to actively reflect on this so that after you leave this presentation, you have some action items for going forward. So we'll give you a minute right now. Take about 30 more seconds. as you think about being intentional about growing with this person, I think it's going to be really important that you create some concrete action items as you think about this over the weekend, or you don't because it's Friday until maybe Monday morning when you come back. Beginning to engage and allow whoever you have chosen to know that they have that space in your life to check you, to call you out, to encourage you, to give you constructive feedback, to let them know that they are that person, that you're asking that of them. I think Tom and Brandon and I all have had those moments, unintentionally for sure, but intentionally also, of like, I need you to hear me out on this, and I'm not sure that this is the best plan of action. So I just encourage you to reach out to whoever you have chosen. And Brandon's going to wrap us up.
Well, I want to say thank you for just taking the opportunity again on a Friday evening now to be a part of this.
Actually, yeah.
Families are waiting for you for dinner and all that great stuff, but we do appreciate it. You know, one of the things that, you know, when you look over at these resources, I think it's one of the things that we've taken from one another is just a joy to read things and engage in different conversations. So we shared a few books that we've talked about. In fact, one of them this week, we actually got Miriam to buy on Amazon, which is The Boys in the Boat. Probably one of the best books of all time.
Strongly recommend it.
Highly recommend it. Like, just go ahead and click off this. We're going to give you some time to go buy it.
Yeah.
The reality is,
Zaida's going to
leadership
work out some HR money budget for training, right, Zaida? About how to relationships. All 6 of these books going to come to you.
So one of the big ones there in the middle, we had a unique opportunity to live in a leadership bubble for a long time with a great leader who shared that book with us. Miriam found on the road back to you and has used Enneagrams and different things for her staff, and Crucial Conversations was mentioned. And Tom and I, we love everything about Malcolm Gladwell. So the best way to learn how to talk to strangers is to get the book, right? But the reality is one of the things that, you know, brings this together and why it's something that is kind of unique and special is, you know, that last lecture book in the corner. If you haven't heard of this, you take your time. It's on YouTube, but you can actually watch the whole thing instead of reading the book. But it's this idea that if you had one opportunity to provide one last lecture to a group, what would it be? And over the last week and a half, I've had the joy of spending time with people I don't get to spend time with every day. And those hours and minutes that may not have been productive and may not have yielded the best presentation, yielded good memories, yielded good conversation. And that lasted till 11 o'clock at night some nights. And I think for us, you know, the crux of it is maybe this presentation was us sharing what we've done for you, but really it was just a selfish opportunity for us to spend time with one another. And you don't get that everywhere, guys. And I think for us, when you are present with your people and you look around and you may not know who they are and you may not know what they're capable of, if you're not willing to make that engagement, you'll never know their impact. You know, everyone's impact on you is 0 until you engage. Then it's infinite. And so we would challenge you to take the time to really look at who around you have you not engaged with, and who do you think can impact you, and who can you impact? Relationship, two-way street. And so I want to say thank you for just taking some time with us today and letting us be selfish to spend time together, and then to provide just a little insight of what the last almost decade has provided us.
I think we each are finding that in this mission, we have received more than what we bargained for or what we signed up for 9 years ago. And our hope is that you take the steps to engage with those around you to find the same thing. So thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget, there is the closing remarks at 5:30 today. So take a quick break and then we will join you at 5:30.
Nice job, guys. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.